Hello and welcome to the Rockies Hockey Podcast, episode 2 here. Thanks so much for joining us, and thank you so much to everyone who watched the last episode. Um, and for taking the time to watch. That was a really long one, way longer than I thought it was going to be. So, thank you for staying with that and watching that one, if you did. Thanks for being here today to listen to the second episode of the podcast series here. Today we'll be talking about a lot of different stuff. We're talking about the three Flames games that have happened since I last recorded the podcast: the Coyotes game, the Oilers game, and the Avalanche game. Afterwards, we'll be talking about a couple things from the Sharks game, which I talked about last podcast, but a few things from that one. The Evgen Dadonov trade situation, which is the trade that got canceled. We'll be talking about that later on in the podcast. The overall Matthew Coronato and his Harvard team, what they're doing, big Flames prospect. The Stockton Heat and their playoff success, or no, I guess regular season success, but their success in the AHL this year. A trade I actually missed last episode for the trade deadline one, the Jack McBain trade. Sorry about that. I did miss that one. We'll be talking about that one afterwards. And then overall, I think I'm going to go a little bit more in depth on the trade deadline since I didn't do the best job talking about everything. I think I just kind of talked about some of the best teams and not every team. And I think I'm going to I'm going to dive a little bit more into that one for this one, and that will be the end of it. So I'm assuming this one should be a little bit shorter than the last one was. Last one was almost 2 hours long and way longer than I expected it to be. And I guess talking about a lot of those trades, it was some of the trades I talked about for 4 or 5 minutes, and some of them I talked about for 15 seconds, but still did take a lot longer than expected. Hoping this one is going to be a bit shorter, but who knows? So basically, before so I guess let's just dive straight into this. Yeah, there isn't much to talk about. So the first off, the Arizona Coyotes game. Uh, okay, this one I guess just some of the main things that happened. First of all, Gaudreau scored his 200th career goal, plus having a 3-point night. That's beautiful. I remember the 200 goal, kind of like a 2-on-0 with Blake Coleman, and he saw Vamelka was down and shot. That was a beautiful play. Really awesome stuff. And I guess also that was his 30th goal of the year. Lindholm also had a goal, and Kachuk also had a goal. What does that mean? Well, that means we have four Flamespurs have 30 plus goals this year, and that leads the league in 30 goal scores. Last I checked, I still believe that the Flames have that. There are a couple teams with two. There might be a team here and there with three, but four, that's pretty solid. And I think the last time the Calgary Flames did that was back in the early 90s. I think 93, 94, or 92, 93. One of those two seasons. But that's really awesome. So you got Lindholm with, I guess now numbers are a little bit updated. Lindholm with 34, Mangiapane with 30, Kachuk with, I believe it's 32 now, and Gaudreau with 30. So that's just awesome. Just shows that Flames are a really, really deep team. Really happy about that. Just the way the Flames are playing, and shows the depth we've got. We're not kind of relying on the same guys to score. And I guess there are the four of them. There's also a lot of other guys generating offense. One of those guys had a goal as well in the power play, Rasmus Anderson. Absolute beauty of a goal. Made that, it was a 4-2 goal. Or sorry, I believe not the 4-2 goal, the 4-1 goal. What a beautiful goal by Razzie. Just like on the power play, just, decides instead of, dropping that back to Johnny or sort of just, I guess bringing it himself, he just decides, or dumping it in, I guess. Just decides he's going to skate through the entire Arizona D, their entire PK, and just like skates right through and dekes out the Malk. And I guess you can only do that against a team like Arizona, which was really awesome. Really, really sweet goal. Another note, Monahan was scratched for the first time. Like, I think he finally that needed to happen. Richie was in, no Carpenter yet. And I guess that makes sense. I believe Daryl Sutter did also say that he should have been keeping a closer eye on Monahan for the last 20-25 games, make sure he's keeping him in check. But I guess he was scratched. The Coyotes, and I was glad he was. I think he needed that, sort of just to scratch him, send that message, and then bring him back in a couple of games. I will talk about Monahan a little bit later, I think. Originally, I was going to talk about him kind of just with the games, but I think I'll actually talk about him after the Colorado game, because sum it up, each game kind of has like a bit of the story for Monahan. But regardless, Richie was in, no Carpenter. That's kind of it. Another point of the game that I made was Lewis hit on Dineen in the game. Not really dirty or anything. I don't believe it was called either, but just a big hit. At first, I did think there was a little bit of head contact on that one, but the league hasn't done anything about it. Lewis was in the next couple of games after that, so not really something majorly of concern, I think. So that's kind of the main points of the game. Now, my thoughts on the game as a whole. This is a bad game, and I say that because it's only 4-2. Um, so like, what's wrong with 4-2? A win's a win. I get it. That's the mentality you need to have with some of these times. But this is the type of game that should have just been a wash. Like the first, I get it, kind of sloppy play, but that's fine. And then the third period, right? Like we explode with 3 goals. Right there, like start it off. I think it was like the first 8 or 10 minutes of the second period. We get 3 straight. Right, that's Johnny Gaudreau, Lindholm, and Kachuk with the 3 goals. I don't remember what order it was, but those 3 guys scored, and it was like, all right, nice, we're back. But it felt like to me that this should have been a wash. Like 2 goals allowed against a team like the Coyotes. That's a league bottom team right now, and I'll double check that just to make sure I have it right here. But in the league standings, scrolling all the way to the bottom here, Arizona is the bottom team. They're below teams like Montreal, Seattle, Ottawa, Philly. Like, they're having a horrible, horrible year, and it feels bad. It feels disappointing that we would allow 2 goals. Like, we also did that the time before where we met them. Like, it was in Arizona, and it was Marstrom in it as well for that allowed for 2 goals. Like, it felt like, it shouldn't have been like that. And it's disappointing. 2 goals allowed. Like, you might as well, like, that's really horrible. Seemed like Arizona, and just to kind of, like, put that in perspective, both goals the Coyotes scored, both those players scored their first career goals with those goals. I believe it was like that. I could be wrong. But I believe it was their first career goals. That's how much of a noob team they are. The only good players they have are Clayton Keller and Chychrun, who didn't get traded because he's injured. He wasn't playing. Clayton Keller. There's also Galchenyuk. He's having an okay year. There's Schmaltz, who's having an okay year as well. Who else is there on this team? Lawson Krause is having, I think, a 20-goal year or something. But other than, like, they have, and I guess no offense to Arizona, they have a good future ahead of them. But again, no offense, but they're a bad team, and you don't allow 2 goals against a team like that. And I think I wouldn't put them on Markstrom either. I think they were just bad plays, and right. A little bit disappointed that we allowed those 2 goals, and we didn't. It wasn't really, a fun game, a high-scoring game like I would have expected. But again, a win's a win, so I'm not going to sit around and complain too much. But yeah, and I guess, also in the starter situation, Markstrom did start this game. I believe he made 16 saves on a total of 18 shots. Originally, last podcast, I was kind of just looking ahead of the schedule and just thinking who should start this game. I originally said it should be Dan Vladar who started this game, and then Markstrom against Edmonton because it's a back-to-back situation. But now that I think about it, I think Markstrom Daryl Sutter decided to start Markstrom this game. I think it was a good choice because he needed to get his confidence back up. Again, not the best last couple of games for him, and I think it was a good way to get his confidence up again. Allowed those 2 goals. Didn't have the best save percentage. Didn't have the best game, but he did make a couple of good saves. Again, just to get his confidence built, I think this was a good win for him. And he would actually play the next game on the back-to-back against Edmonton as well, which a little bit of a surprise, but I guess that's Daryl Sutter. He wasn't too busy at all against Arizona, so I think it was fine. So now let's move on to the Edmonton game, the 9-goal game. That's part of the title for this one because that's how big it was. I think this pretty much was like highlight of the entire Flames week. For me, there's a lot I have to go over for this one, but first of all, 9-5 victory for the Calgary Flames. Insanity. Absolute insanity. 9 goals. Like, that was a crazy game. Stressful at times, for sure, but it's pretty crazy. Like, I don't even know how to describe this. 9-5. Like, it was at a point where it was 6-5 or 6-4, and it wasn't even halfway through the game. And I was like, oh my gosh, some team's going to score 10 goals. And the Flames almost did score 10 goals. They had 9. A couple of good chances there. But regardless, this is a crazy game. Crazy, crazy game. So yeah, I guess the main numbers I have to share here. 5-on-5, Flames outscored the Oilers 9-2. Talk about 5-on-5 play. Absolutely dominated them. Oilers' power play was 3 out of 5, though, which means we allowed 3 power play goals on a total of 5 penalties we took. It's horrible. Flames. Or I guess the Flames' PK and power play was both horrible. The PK, is not that good. It makes sense against the Oilers, and I guess we did outplay them so much at 5-on-5 that we were able to come away with the win here. And our power play wasn't good either. Like, I think we should have had a little bit more offense generated on the power play, and I think because we gave up so many penalties and then didn't play well on the PK, I think it led the Oilers stay in the game much into the, I guess, into the third as well after that. And pretty much the winning play, and I'll talk about Kachuk also said this, winning play was Markstrom making that big save in the third, which kind of basically turned the tides and the Flames go went ahead and scored 3 goals, put the game away. But I guess it's forgivable to PK considering the fact that we scored 9 5-on-5 goals. Which brings me to the point. The Oilers suck 5-on-5. They, like, I mean, come on. They didn't seem at all like they were in the zone with that. Not, they barely, none of them made good defensive plays 5-on-5. Like, there were just moments where they were standing, like, Darnell Nurse put, I believe it was the go-ahead goal by Tanev in the first, like, put it in his own goal, like, just atrocious overall, the entire play. And I was like, oh, that's good. Oilers aren't playing well, which was good because we won the game because of that. Just pretty bad stuff for them. 5-5. We played really well. 5-5. Obviously, we outscored them 9-2. Shows how over-reliant they are on the power play. Another factor: Draisaitl scored a hat trick, and there were like hats on the ice, which was like triggering because it was in Calgary. But you see, brings me to a point that I've been making for quite a while. The Oilers are over-reliant on McDavid, Draisaitl, and literally they have no other players contributing nearly as much as them, right? You've got Draisaitl at like almost 50 goals. I think 47 or 48. He might even have more now. I'll take a look at that just to see it here. Draisaitl, 48 goals. McDavid, 36 goals. The next best player on the team, I think, is Zach Hyman with less than 25. Which just goes to show that's just, they're over-reliant on them. And Draisaitl has to score a hat-trick to keep them in this one. And that's the way I saw it, at least. With the 3 goals, 2 of them are on the power play, obviously. One of them was 5-on-3, I think, that he scored that. But the Flames, obviously, with the depth scoring, 3 players with 2 goals each, Kachuk, Lindholm, and Backlund, with, so 2 each for them, along with Tanev having a goal, Dubé having a goal, and who was the last one? Gosh, I'm forgetting this. Right, Shillington, with that. So, like, just shows the depth, right? You've got 2 goals from D. Sure, you've got a couple guys with multiple goals, but when you score 9 goals, that should be expected to have, guys who have more than 1 goal. And just the overruns. Like, I felt like, honestly, it was the power play and McDavid Draisaitl that kept the Oilers in this game. Other than that, this was just a Flames game all around. And so that's awesome. Another major pointer, Johnny Gaudreau had 5 assists. He was playing like crazy out there. That's a career high for assists. NHL career high for assists for Gaudreau. That was a really, really nice to see him play. He was just making those plays. He was deking, or they would kind of go on the rush, and you think he'd have a breakaway and spin around, do some really nice deking there, and just to wait for the guy to come over, make that pass and shoot. And even Kachuk did some of that. And I think one play I did notice that they made was Kachuk wasn't one-teeing a lot of those shots. He did that, I think, twice this game, where he kind of waited for the pass, got the pass from Gaudreau, and then sort of just waited in front of the net. And didn't immediately go for the 1-tee. You kind of like waited and then looked for the open spot and shot it because, well, why do you have so much time? The Flames had so much time to make these moves because the Oilers' D was just not present in their zone. Like, they were just not there, and they gave us so much time, for the Flames, so much time to play in front. And again, that one right there was just multiple Flames goals. That was at least 4 or 5 goals were just like that, where lack of defensive presence in front of Oilers' goal. Obviously, Mikko Koskinen allowed, I think, 5 goals on 12 or 13 shots, and that got him pulled. But at a point, the Oilers allowed 6 goals on 16 shots, and the Oilers led the shots as well. Like, late in the second, and still, being outscored by the Flames. So, and good for us. So yeah, Mikko first goal, maybe it was the second shot, not sure. 14 total goals, crazy game. Carpenter was out, obviously. Carpenter in for the first game as a Flame. Not too much stuff from him, I would say. And I guess sort of the main point, and we'll get to some of the press conference, some of the press quotes, over here. And just one thing that I just wanted to take a look at is just some of the time on ice. And I was looking at these the time on ice records for this game, and they were pretty ridiculous. From the Edmonton Oilers, I would say, just looking at the time on ice, talk about the over-reliance situation, if at all. And I think it's not really much of a secret that the Oilers are just running on McDavid and Draisaitl at this point. They've added some much-needed depth for them, for sure, with, like Hyman, Evander Kane, uh, right? Yamamoto's been playing really well of late, as well as Nugent Hopkins. He's good. Derek Brassard's been playing well. But still, McDavid Draisaitl run this team. Looking at some of the time on ice, the biggest red flags were Connor McDavid, 23 minutes and 2 seconds. There was also Tyson Barrie with 23 minutes and 57 seconds. And those are the top two players on the Oilers for time on ice. Looking for Draisaitl. Draisaitl played 19:58, which I think is pretty okay for a first line, or I guess a top player like him, which made sense. But again, just some of this is pretty big numbers. Versus when you look at the Flames, Gaudreau 17:35, Lindholm 19:48, and that's because he was on the penalty kill as well a lot of the time, so that adds to that. What about Kachuk? 15:48 only. The penalties, I guess with the more penalties the Flames took, he was off for a little bit longer. The top 2D here were Hanifin with 23:49 and Anderson with 22:12. Which again, you don't want to see. I guess for a top D, around 24 minutes does make sense, but I think a little bit less, obviously. But again, compared to the Oilers, that's pretty crazy. I mean, you look at some of the other players for the Oilers, right? You've got Brassard with 9:45, Puljujarvi with 9:25. Right, these guys were barely out, and it was just McDavid Draisaitl the whole time. And you feel that way when you're watching these games. It's like every other shift, it's one of those guys out. Yeah. So just overall, just a factor that I wanted to point out there, and I think that just goes to show the reliance they have on those same old two guys. But regardless, so now I want to just get some of the press quotes. Oh no, there's one more thing I wanted to mention here. Just saw this stat. I'm not sure if this is how true this is. I think it must have been accurate though. I think I read it somewhere online. I can't remember where though. It's the fact that Leon Draisaitl becomes the first player since 1983 to score a hat trick and have a -4 plus minus rating. Like since 1983, that is 39 years ago. Wow, that's a crazy statistic. Just that lack of defense. Obviously, 5-on-5 was a horrible game for the Oilers, and right since 19 to score a hat trick and have a -4 rating. He's out there for 7 total goals, or maybe even more. I don't know. Yeah, no, 7 total. No, he also had an assist, so I think he was out there for at least 8 of the total goals scored in the game. So pretty bad, I guess, for him. And so let's get some of the press conference stuff. I just kind of went ahead and wrote down some of the main quotes some of these guys said on the press conference. We got something from Sutter. So yeah, this was hilarious. They asked him, basically, he was asked what he thought of the overall energy in the game, and he said it was really awesome. And he said, quote, kind of paraphrasing, but he said, the only thing I didn't like was all them black hats that got thrown on the ice. Like, must have been a giveaway in Leduc or something. So just roasting the Oilers there. I found that hilarious the moment I heard that, and then the entire press room starts laughing. Sutter just some of the best answers at press conferences. Number one, I didn't like all the black hats getting thrown at, well, not black hats, but just hats in general getting thrown at Draisaitl's hat trick. And like when the Oilers scored, you could literally hear cheering. And I guess living in Calgary, you'd think, I guess I was also in the presumption that in Calgary there's only Flames fans, but I guess not, because like looking at the stands, there's tons of Oilers fans there as well. So yeah, I mean, again, you didn't like it. I didn't like that either, but that was hilarious. Seeing it must have been a giveaway in Leduc. So yeah, another key quote in much more seriousness, I guess. Basically, they asked Daryl Sutter what he thought of Johnny Gaudreau. He was just dangling around and getting those 5 assists. He had a really solid game. And he said basically the key was get a win. Right, you're probably saying the same stuff 2 or 3 years ago, but he's got to win. Plays a complete game. I mean, it's not about goals and assists always. And he also talked about, and so I guess it's back to me. It's also basically what Sutter said, and I agree. He's saying that back in 18-19, right, Johnny Gaudreau was playing so well, and I was like, oh my gosh, he's so good. But he wasn't playing the full 200-foot game, and that cost the Flames in the playoffs. And so I'm saying get a win, right? That's the most important thing. You don't always get the goals and the assists, but that's the most important factor. You think they're going to win? And then he also talked about So he'll start about getting asked that question about a different player. It might be Monahan, but I'm not sure who he's talking about. But he said that it's not about offense, it's also defense to play the complete game, which I agree with. And that's been the Sutter mentality, right? I mean, you could have like you could have a season where you score 50 goals and have like 100 points, and your team still doesn't make the playoffs. You can still have maybe a plus 10 rating, plus minus. Obviously, that's a good quote from Sutter there. And I guess a good example of this, and y'all are gonna think talking about the Oilers again, but example of the Edmonton Oilers a few years back, McDavid and Dressel both had 100 points. Both of them, like above 100. They both played really well. I think Dressel have had the more chart, maybe even the Hart and the Artros, but I'm not sure about that. And they didn't even make the playoffs. They had 2 years with 100 points, but it's not always about goals. It's about the whole team game, and I guess getting the win, right? I mean, you can score a hat trick and not get the win. Draisaitl in this game. Sorry, I'm getting gapped from a lot, but yeah, that's definitely a good quote. That's already, and that's been the mentality whole year, and good to enforce that. So what Kachuk had to say. So just gonna go next year. So I thought that the turning point in the game, or the biggest point in the game, was Markie's save, and we got the 7th goal right after that. Lots of guys got rewarded tonight, but I think that play should go down as a winning play for us, or whatever, because that was obviously a great play by a great player, and we needed that. Totally agree. Yeah, so you said that was a winning play, and that's exactly what happened. Markstrom made a big save. I think it was a bit of a defensive lapse by the Flames on the change, and you always got a good rush going. It was McDavid and Puljujärvi maybe, and Puljujärvi had a good shot chance, and Markstrom made a really solid save, and then the puck goes the other way, and Lindholm scores, right? The second goal of his game, and it's 7-5, and then after that, it was kind of all Flames, and the Oilers didn't have much of a chance to get the pushback going. At that point, it was a 4-goal differential, like it was 9-5, and they really didn't push back because it was sort of a lost game right there. So I do agree. Markstrom, you might think, look at the save percentage and stuff, but I think this was another big game for his confidence. He got the win, obviously, and even though he allowed a bunch of goals, he also made a bunch of big saves. If it wasn't for Markstrom, this game would have been a lot different. He made a bunch of big saves on McDavid, who was just skating all over the place, so good for him, for sure. Final quote I want to do is Draisaitl. So pretty much, I was listening to his press conference, and I was like, well, everything he's saying is noteworthy, probably because he was kind of just like saying they played a bad game, and it made me happy as a Flames fan. So yeah, basically, it kind of quoted everything he said in the press conference. I might not have everything here, but more or less kind of paraphrasing here. He said, obviously, not good enough. Don't really have to say anymore. You can't give up 9 goals and expect to win. No, it's not. It's not on our goalies. It's on us. Obviously, not blaming the goalies. I would say, yeah, I mean, it wasn't really, any of the goals weren't really the goalies' fault, because the goalies could have been a bit better, but you can't really complain when there's, right, like, Gaudreau and Tkachuk just standing there. Gaudreau's, like, deking out the 1D you've got, while he passes to Tkachuk, who's just open, and he has all the time in the world to choose whatever shot he wants to make on goal. While, defense kind of slowly comes back, like, turnovers, in the defensive zone by the Oilers. So, yeah. I do agree with Draisaitl here. And then talk about on the 5-on-5 and the D zone play. Said, yeah, it happens. Not good enough. Obviously starts with me. I have to be a lot better. My group and myself will be a lot better. So, I guess that does make sense. I don't get why he's saying that himself. He had the hat trick. He actually talked about that a little bit later. But yeah, it has to be a defensive game, I think, for sure, for the Oilers. And from what I heard from some of their other press comments, like Woodcroft talking, they're talking about how their 5-on-5 has improved of late, and this game just completely fell apart. No, I guess that's kind of what he means by that. Just kind of be better, right? You can't allow 9 goals and expect to win, as he said. So then he talked about the hat trick. They asked him about the hat trick, and he kind of just, as soon as the guy stopped asking the question, he just said, "Yeah, it doesn't matter." Just said, "No, it doesn't matter." So doesn't matter. You can't lose 9 to whatever a game. Just leave it at that. And so obviously he didn't like it. He scored the hat trick, and I was kind of scared that it's kind of like, obviously everyone's just going to be like, oh well, Draisaitl scored a hat trick, and like doesn't kind of everyone just be like, oh, Draisaitl scored a hat trick, blah blah blah. And I was like, oh well, I mean, he scored a hat trick. That's going to be the point of attention, not the fact that the Flames beat the Oilers 9-5. And I guess it really wasn't. Which was good for me, and I guess kind of comes from the media presence in Edmonton and just the media that surrounds McDavid and Draisaitl. And I guess the Oilers, because of those two guys, that's all the attention goes to. But I'm glad Dressel even said that he doesn't care about that, which does make sense, right? So he was asked about resetting after 9 even strength goals allowed. He said, you just flush it. I mean, you take the negatives out of it. Not too many positives. So yeah, I guess park it and move on. We just have to make sure we respond on Monday, which they actually did. They did respond on Monday. I believe they beat the Coyotes. Coyotes 6-1. So I guess they did respond, but in an easy game. So yeah, makes sense, I guess. And then talking about playing Calgary in the playoffs, didn't really say much about that. He just said again, you can't give up 9 goals. Doesn't matter against who. You're never going to win a game in the NHL if you give up 9. We can talk all we want. It's not good enough top to bottom. Starts with me, our leadership group. I'm pretty confident we'll be better. Which I guess they were against Arizona, unfortunately. But unfortunately for the Flames, or me, I guess, as a Flames fan. But, makes sense. And I guess he said all the typical stuff. But it felt like that he genuinely was upset about this game. I get, why wouldn't he be, right? 9 5-on-5 goals allowed. That's pretty bad. So, overall, though, good game from the Flames. About the press conferences, I do watch these all just either online or like YouTube or something, where sometimes on YouTube, sometimes just find them online, sometimes from the like NHL app that I have on my phone. So yes, if you do want to watch them, do go ahead and check those out. Sometimes they're pretty fun to watch. If you're somewhat into this stuff, check out Daryl Sutter's press conference, which is what I do. Like, that's the best one. He always has some really good stuff to say. So yeah. So I guess moving on to the Colorado Avalanche game. So basically, I'm actually recording this right after watching the Avalanche game. I watched the Avalanche game, did some final like little touch that to make just my overall notes stuff, which I'm looking at right now as I talk about this. And watch the press conferences from the Flames and kind of just get into it. So basically, this game is pretty fresh in my mind right now. We lost 2-1 to the Colorado Avalanche. Why? I don't know. We weren't good enough, but we also had a lot of shots on goal. Like, I don't know what you exactly point out with this game. And I guess I'm gonna start it at this. I guess talk about the game overall. First period, it's pretty... Well, actually, no. Before that, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. Talk about how McKinnon, Landeskog, and Girard are all out. McKinnon with a hand injury. I don't know how long he's going to be out. Landeskog, I believe, is going to be out till the end of the regular season at least. Same with Girard, although he may be back. I'm not sure about their injuries. But they were out. They weren't playing, neither of them. Which meant the Colorado lineup looked like it had just been bombed. Totally bombed lineup looking. Because, right... yeah. They had Lehkonen on their second line, which was like, what? Isn't he supposed to be more of a depth piece? But yeah, they were pretty ripped apart. It felt like they were pretty destroyed there. But, and I felt like this was going to be a clean win for us, and it wasn't, which was again very disappointing. First period, it's 0-0, no goals, right? Both sides get chances. Both sides I think both sides might have had a power play each, or at least one power play each. Nothing much happens, and it's 0-0. Oh, well, what are you going to do? Moving into the second period. Second period happens. It seems like it's kind of all Flames. And then we get a power play, and then it turns into a 5-on-3. And obviously, 5-on-3, we outwork them, make those right passing plays in. Big slap shot or 1T from Toffoli that scores. 5-on-3, good. We're up 1-0. But a little bit later, we take a penalty, and in front, this first goal from the Avalanche on the first one was, I think, was their first penalty the Flames took, to tie it up, and basically they were just working the puck on us. We couldn't at all clear the puck at all. We were just tired in the zone. Pretty much every unit the Flames had been their penalty, and so the Avalanche were just working it on us. A few times we did get a couple touches on the puck. Branson did, I know, but they were just tenacious, and I guess them for doing a good job with keeping that on side, like keeping it in the zone and being able to keep playing. Branson had it; he almost could try to make a play, but in that caused the giveaway, and then quick play resulted in the goal. And then McCudger took the shot on a goal, deflected off from Nichushkin. Markstrom was angry after that one, but it was a fair goal, I think. So, unfortunately, tired guys, you need to get the clear going. And the second goal. This one was a lot worse. Lindholm takes a tripping penalty. I wasn't really that penalty. I don't think it was the most fair call. Makes sense, I guess, but it wasn't the most fair call in Lindholm there. But this time we actually do a good job clearing the puck a couple of times. But then they come the other way, and just a bad play. Like Kadri gets a good rush into the zone, gets a almost a bit of a breakaway chance on Markstrom, but stopped and kind of driven into the corner. And then you got 3 of the 4 killers going after into the boards after Kadri and a couple of the other guys over there, leaving Rantanen and kind of virtually just out there. Nichushkin sort of in the net area. While Goodbranson's there, puck comes out, just, the point, pass it right to Landeskog, and by the time we're coming out, like, Rantanen's already gone. Nichushkin's already tipped that in. Just Goodbranson had to make the play. The Goodbranson was left alone, and I don't think you really blame him. Afterwards, though, the Sutter did talk about how it was a mental mistake. That stuff, right? So I'm just going to look at the quotes he had. The first one tonight, the puck should go down the ice, right? Obviously, he's talked about that. Forwards had 2 cracks at it. The second one is just a straight by our defenseman, just a straight read. Those are mental mistakes. Is what they are. Very simple. Makes sense, I guess. Just a read there, and you can't get all you guys kind of chasing into one, and you have to have a little bit more form, I think, which is why that whole play happened. And Nichushkin has 2 goals, and it's 2 to an Avalanche. Which means our PK in this game was 1 of 3, killed 1 penalty, allowed 2 goals, which was horrible. Power play was 1 of 5. We had that 1 power play goal, but it was a 5-on-3 goal, and on that we did have a fair few chances on the power play, but couldn't really do much. Which brings me to my point on special teams. PK is 33%, 33.333, whatever, 33%. Last game, PK was 40. This game, I don't think Avs are a good team, very offensive team. They have a lot of good players, that can really good on the power play. But again, 2 guys, right? McKinnon and Landeskog weren't there. Gerard, I would assume that he also is on one of the power play units. He's also out, which takes away some of their better players on the power play. Which, I mean, that's not good. And we weren't able to. And so yeah, I hope this doesn't become a trend. And I think whatever it is, Flames do get that back to where it usually is. And I think Backlund also did talk about it a little bit on the penalty kill. So he said, I think it was Backlund. I'm just reading off the website right now. We know we can do better. We know we've been really solid all year. We had 1 or 2 games during the year similar to this where we let too many in, but we rebounded and played really solid after that. Knowing we've been good all year helps going to the next game, knowing we can do better. For sure. It's only 2 games, right? There's always time for bounce. You just don't want this becoming a trend, which is my main concern with this. Which kind of like, I mean, I don't know, really, there's only 2 more points here. The next point, just my overall thoughts on this game. Makar was playing a lot of hockey. A lot. And, not under-exaggerating when I say this here. Makar was out there for, I think, the entire first power play, which, because they scored the last 3 seconds, Makar took that shot on goal. I'm just going to take a look at ice time here. But it felt like it was pretty bad. And talk about that, again, that over-reliance factor comes in, and Makar played 28 minutes and 41 seconds. It's when Devin Toews, his defensive partner, played 25 minutes and 41 seconds. So 3 minutes less, but that's still a lot of time. Playing almost half the game there. Yeah, so again, they had their top guys going at it a lot, but which makes sense considering the injuries they've got. But this was pretty bad, I think, to have them out for that long. He's out there for the majority. He was out there for the majority of the power play where they scored, or like the entire one basically, because they scored with 3 seconds left. And then for the second one, which the Flames killed off, he was out there for the majority of it. And the third one, he was also out there for quite a bit. So, and then a Overland's factor comes in. He's playing like every other shift, it felt like. And him and Devin Taves, sorry, like, just the overdowns factor comes in again. I personally really don't like it when it comes to over reliance on just a certain group of players. Which brings me to the next point, which is kind of the opposite of what I just said. I know it's a little bit redundant. Why can't the Flames rely just a little bit more on their first line, which is Matthew Tkachuk, Johnny Gaudreau, and Elias Lindholm? Those three. Not in the right order, but those three. Um, I know it's a little bit redundant for me, like saying McDavid and Draisaitl get too or over relied on, and then me saying that Makar and like McKinnon, those guys were, or like as Makar and Taves are over relied on defensively for the Avs. But at this point, and I get it's written, I know, and I personally disagree with over relying on your top players, but here was the worst part of the entire game for me that really did kind of set me over the top. I guess frustrated me. Why can Sutter not play the first line more, just even a little bit more, when we're down a goal with under 7 or 8 minutes left? Why? It feels like I get the idea of rolling all 4 lines, right? I get that. I like that idea. That's the way it should be. You roll all 4 lines. You play all 4 lines. Short shifts. That's the right mentality you need. And that's the playoff mentality, in my opinion, right? I also just really don't like when the teams over-rely on the same players to do the stuff for them. But right? I don't like it at all. But sometimes you have to do it, and I believe in the concept of depth scoring, playing all 4 lines and relying on all the guys to do the work for you. But sometimes you have to, put a little bit more on your top players versus just the same mentality over and over again, which was frustrating for me. And I'm not saying that I agree with it. I'm not saying that the Flames should be sending out the first line for significantly longer than the other lines, or even the top 6 group longer than the bottom 6 group, or like significantly longer, right? But I think that this game, it needed to happen. Like, look, Flames I felt like the third period we were lacking energy. Not able to we're just lacking energy, yes, yeah. And not how to describe this. And we were just not really into it. It felt like, and I think we needed those guys to come out and play for us, which was good. And what if I was like 4 minutes left? It's like time flies when you're down, especially in the third. Right? Like, with like 4 minutes left, what I observe is like, yeah, okay, the first line comes out, and I'm like, yes, finally, get something going. Don't really get anything going, but in like 30 seconds, like the 4th line's out. And I'm like, what are you doing? Send them out for a little bit longer, coach. At the end, I guess we did do that with about a minute and a half left. We pulled Markstrom. We got everybody. We got the main group out. We also, I think we had, who did we have out? We had Gaudreau, Lindholm, Tkachuk, I believe Hannafin, Backlund, and I think it was Shillington or Anderson. Anderson maybe then there, and then even when they took the penalty with 15 seconds left, we also had Razzie that we 6-on-4. We had these guys going ahead. We did get a few good chances with the empty net there, but just not enough. Like, sometimes you just have to maybe send them out for an extra shift to get them going. And I was personally a little bit upset that this didn't happen, but what are you gonna do? And it kind of sucks to lose against a team like the Avalanche, who now are like 30 of like 100 points. I guess I will take a look at the standings here for the league. Oh yeah, exactly 100 points for the Avs as they lead the league. 4 points ahead of the Panthers as well. Whew, sheesh. Yeah, that's pretty insane there, but yeah. So I guess that's kind of where it's at for that. Just thinking about some other thoughts that I have. So that's what it's like. On a positive note, though, Gaudreau is 4th in the league in points now, I believe. I will need to also double check that. Yeah, 4th in the league with points with 90, well above 5th, which is Austin Matthews with 5, and Tkachuk is 6th with 83. And Gaudreau's he's like on a 110-ish point pace. It's crazy, but I think he can probably do more than that. I think overall, though, because how many games do the Flames have left? Flames have 16 games left. So, I think if he plays sort of like that, he's played the season, like somewhat from the higher end of the spectrum he's played this season, he can easily have 25 points for the rest of the year and have 115 and Who knows? 120. Well, you can hope, I guess. Which would be really awesome to see. And Kachuk is also on pace for about 100 points, which is what you really want to see. So I guess talking about the entire Monahan situation. Uh, from Monahan. So here's the story. If there's a big confusion here. Um, he's playing okay, right? With the surgery and all that this year, if you don't know what's happening, this is kind of what's happening. He had a surgery in the offseason. Last season he was weak. He had surgery because he just was pretty badly injured. He had the surgery and he comes into the season sort of weak, not playing the best, but it makes sense. His role is shifted to a fourth line or a bottom six center rather than a key offensive player on the team. And it makes sense, right? You need to shift that change. And he was accepting it and he was going okay. He started to feel like, he's doing good on the power play, though. And he's still making an okay game. And then he just seemed to kind of fall off. The Flames go on this massive 10-game winning streak. Everyone's red hot. And then there's Monahan, who's just underperforming. And then finally it was all right, well, maybe you trade him at the trade deadline. And I was sort of starting to kind of lean in that direction. I didn't want to see him go, but trying to think, well, if it's for the best, if the Flames really need to acquire one more guy for a good playoff run, then maybe it's Monahan who has to go. Well, it felt that way. He didn't get traded and he's here, and finally he would get scratched against Arizona, as I mentioned. And I agreed with this. I was like, yeah, well, you need to do that to kind of send a message, just kind of maybe try some other guy out. Does it work out? Well, we really don't know. But then they all scratched into the Edmonton game, which made sense, and he was back to play against the Avs. Which I guess that makes sense. You can scratch into the games, he was back, and I guess while he was scratched, talking, heard some of the interviews from some of the other guys talking. And I guess Johnny Gaudreau specifically, Gaudreau and Monahan have spent the longest time together on the power play. Or not on the power play, on the same line with the Flames, years ago. And they were so good together, they obviously are really close because of that time that they spent together on the same line in Calgary. I guess they're still in Calgary, but on the same line. And Gaudreau said, I believe he said this, and I hope I'm saying this right. So this quoting Gaudreau here, said that a lot of players on this team can score, and not all of them are in the lineup. And I think he's talking about Monahan. Obviously, Monahan can score. But again, he lacks that confidence. He's lost that confidence with his overall play declining. He's not playing his best. Definitely not playing his best here. And I guess, it's disappointing, but at the same time, you can't really, really blame him with the way it's going, right? His confidence is low, and then he comes back against the Avalanche just to play. And he plays really well. His face-off percentage, I'm going to look up here. Going into the game. Stuff here, sorry. Give me a sec. I can look. There it is. So, just in the time on ice statistics for the game. So yeah, Sean Monahan. On the face-off, Monahan was 75%. So was Lindholm, but he was 75% on the dot. Which led all Flames centermen in that category, which was great, I think. So I'm talking about all centermen. Toffoli did come in for a couple of draws since Backlund was out and won them all. But still, Monahan played so good on the dot. You felt like he was into it. He didn't make some of the mistakes he'd been making before this. And I'm really happy. That's what you want to see from a guy like him who can still kind of get back into the offensive game and still kind of finish out the year strong. So that's really good for him. I'm happy for him, and I do want him to be playing the next game against LA. See if he can get that, continue kind of rising up again, kind of getting back up onto his feet there. So yeah, really solid stuff from him. The next topic to cover, a couple things from the Sharks game. First of all, did see some stuff about the Markstrom spear on Nick Miloshe. Don't know how to pronounce that name. Kind of. So basically what happened on the play. Basically, Sharks had a couple of chances on goal and Markstrom covers up, but then kind of trickles out. There's a whistle goes, and then Nick Miloshe, I don't know how to pronounce that name, Miloshe, takes the puck and shoots into the net after the whistle. That's not okay. in hockey at least. And Markstrom gets angry. There's a little bit of frustration. Markstrom just kind of gives him a little bit of a slash, which is called. He gets 2 minutes for that, and then he takes just spears the guy. Um, um. So yeah, should this be a suspension? So again, I just say this. I'm recording this after like about a week after it happened, or even more. He didn't get suspended. There was no punishment for him. So there's obviously nothing that came out of it. But should it have been? Well, actually, first of all, I didn't even realize this, and then they showed the replay on TV, and I was like, oh, well, he also did that. Fiery, Markstrom, very fiery. And, I mean, the spearing makes this should have been like a penalty. The 2 more minutes, like slashing and then spearing as well, because Markstrom did both on the play. He also only got called for the slash. This was like, oh, that was pretty. That shouldn't be allowed, but should it have been a suspension? Obviously, I don't say this should have been a suspension necessarily, like a game suspension or whatever. Should have a little bit biased because I'm a Flames fan, but it was done in retaliation. It's not, he just didn't do it because he was angry with the guy, or he was frustrated with something, or he just was like, hey, this guy's kind of standing too close to me, spear. The overall play, like, he shot the puck into the net. It explains why Markstrom did that. Obviously, even if there is reason for something like that to happen, doesn't mean you should still do it. Didn't result in any serious injury from Milosh either. Didn't get a fine either. Maybe it should have been a small fine, but again, it was a violent motion, but it wasn't that hard of a spear. Like, he kind of jabbed at him, but it wasn't just something that should have like really really hurt him. It wasn't that like painful or hard. You see some of the spears to some of the spears you see like in play from like a player to from a skater to a skater, and those hurt. It didn't seem like it was that bad. And again, the NHL hasn't taken any action on it after like a week or so it's fine. Markstrom, just to be on the safe side, don't do it again. That's my thoughts on it. And also, the sure team, the Sutter's press conference thing. It's very interesting. If you don't know what happened here, what happened was Markstrom had a bad game against San Jose. Completely his fault, not really, but again, some of those plays he should have been on top of. And the Sutter, being Sutter, doesn't go out for the post-game press conference. Instead, sends out the Flames goalie coach, LaBarbera. It's hilarious. Who's probably never done a press conference in his NHL career, at least. This is unconventional. Coaches don't usually send out goalie coaches to do the press conference, obviously. Which is like, wow, he did that. Yes, he did do that. But is this a new thing to do for Daryl Sutter? No. I also heard back when Sutter was before this time in Calgary, before like 2004 to 2008-ish, when Sutter was a coach of the Flames. He actually did do this a couple times for Kiprusoff or the other goalies he must have had on the team at the time. And send out the goalie coach after bad performance by the goalie to explain this. And the old goalie coach they did an interview and he said, yeah, he just found this like hilarious. Like Sutter's done this before to players. What does this do? Well, look, there's 2 sides to it. First and foremostly, it decreases Markstrom's confidence. Like, there was that bad play in Buffalo, right, that cost the Flames a game, or against Buffalo, that cost the Flames a game in overtime. Bad game against the Sharks here. Even before that, not the best game against New Jersey, which was before the Buffalo game, but still, it decreases his confidence. It's already a bad stretch, and now the coach is like not even doing the press conference, and instead of sending out the goalie coach to answer for you. However, on the flip side, like, Sutter obviously doesn't want that to happen, and he sent out Markstrom against Arizona where he played okay, sent against the Edmonton where he made some really big season. He's the reason we won, I guess. And against Arizona, he also played really, really well. I wouldn't blame him for those 2 goals either. But what is it? This also prepares the team for the playoffs, sending a message so this doesn't happen again in the playoffs at a more crucial time in the season. Like, look, this happens in a game against the Sharks. Sharks got 2 points. They're not even going to impact the standings. They're so far down. They're not in the playoff race. It's not going to affect us. This one loss not going to affect us. We're solidly set at the first place in the Pacific. We're going to make the playoffs. And this one loss isn't going to set us back so much. Like, we're not fighting for a wild card spot that each game matters, or each win matters, or each 2 points matter. This is a fine loss. And But you want to make sure this is the only time it happens. These kinds of mistakes, these kinds of bad, sloppy games. Send a message right now so this doesn't happen again in the playoffs. You're like, well, it's fine. Like, I'll forgive you. No, like, press conference business. Or you send in the goalie coach. Um, and they do, like, Flames or Markstrom doesn't really get impacted by this. And this kind of game happens in the playoffs where it's really, really important that it doesn't happen. Then what do? You send the message now and it doesn't happen, which makes sense to me. And I mean, again, the team's built around Markstrom. I think he's one of the key pieces. Like you talk about Gaudreau, Kachuk, Lindholm, even Mangiapane, being the top players on this team, the leaders, like the main guys who are carrying this team. Markstrom's one of them. Honestly, he's made the biggest impact on this team, right? Because like, if you don't have good goaltending, like you really don't have a good team at all. And let like teams like Toronto and Edmonton, who have such good offensive players, just suffer because of their lack of good goaltending. And so Kachuk said in the interview in the press conference that Marstrom is the team MVP. He's always there to bail the squad out, which he has been. And he, of course, is the team MVP. Like, there's no question about it. Like, you could say Gaudreau and Kachuk and Lindholm. Of course they are. But Markstrom is as well. And I think he's probably the biggest leader on this team as well, looking at the way he, how seriously he takes these games. And then, as I said, just send out against Arizona. It's easy. It's a sign of trust and an easy game to get some confidence back, which he did, and played games back to back, Arizona and Edmonton. So good on him, and I think it's a good move by Sutter. Do I think that like he really needed to do this? No, but it makes sense why he did this, right? It's like in the future you don't lose a crucial game, and like you don't. This doesn't happen in a crucial game. You're sending the message early, so that's good for the team, I think. So yeah, next question. So my thoughts on the Evgeny Dadonov situation. So originally Dadonov was traded to the Anaheim Ducks, but kind of what happened was that Dadonov had a 10-team no-trade list on his contract. I guess, supposedly, which he did, I guess. And it was not presented to Vegas when Dadonov was traded from Vegas to Ottawa. Or, sorry, from Ottawa to Vegas, sorry. And I think it was that Dadonov had to, like, present this list to Ottawa, and I think to just the league in general. I'm not exactly sure what happened. This is a little bit confusing, but he had to show this to Ottawa. The Senators, when he signed his contract before July 1st, and it wasn't shown in time, and it didn't apply, and then Ottawa kind of messed up, and they didn't, like, weren't clear about it to Vegas when they traded Dadonov to Vegas. And so Vegas was like, "Oh, let's trade him to Anaheim." And I was like, "What?" They don't know that he's on trade clause. And basically, Vegas traded him to Anaheim, and it's canceled due to this new trade list, to the no trade clause. And so the Vegas says that the no trade clause wasn't presented to them in time for it to apply, and they didn't know about it essentially because Ottawa wasn't clear about it. But basically, Ottawa said no, we showed it to you. And so the official statement from the league was that the Dadonov trade is cancelled. The National Hockey League announced today that it has invalidated Monday's trade of player Evgeny Dadonov from Vegas to Anaheim. The trade could not be concluded because Dadonov's contract includes a limited no trade clause, which has not been complied with. That's what the league says. My thoughts on the entire situation. Kind of, in a way, all three teams, Ottawa, Vegas, and Anaheim, are to blame. I would say more so at Ottawa and Vegas, less Anaheim. Well, so what's Ottawa's fault? Well, I mean, you weren't clear enough. Right? And I guess, yeah, you didn't really clear, but let's say you were clear, right? And I guess, like, maybe they should have done a better job of it, but I wouldn't really blame Ottawa here. I think the biggest fault is Vegas. Just, like, as I was thinking about that again, Vegas should have known better than to just trade that guy. Like, there's a no trade list before you trade that guy. I would assume that's one of the biggest things you look at. Like, it doesn't make sense to me, a dumb move from Vegas to just be like, well, let's trade him over, and then you realize, oh, shoot, there's no trade clause to Anaheim. This was pretty stupid. Like, I don't get it. They should have known. Kind of funny enough. Kind of imagine this like an NHL, like a NHL 22, or like some video game situation, like in franchise mode, where you're just like playing and you put Dadonov in the trade block, or like in the trading section, and then you put like the Anaheim giving back to you, and then you're like about to click propose trade and just give you like a little X mark saying, if Evgeny Dadonov's no trade clause has not been complied with, or something like that, and you just realize there's a problem in the system and you get over it, you just don't do it. Obviously, it's not like that. It's not a digital entire thing where things like digitally type stuff in. It's not like that, obviously, where there's like you're just being watched over like that. But it feels dumb because you should have known better, right, Vegas? And I'm kind of to blame because they should have also taken a look at it like, oh wait, actually, there's a problem like that. We can't really take him. This should have been executed a lot better, I think, by the Vegas Golden Knights and also Ottawa. For that, so yeah, kind of a bad situation. But hey, Vegas did kind of benefit from this. In the way I look at it, the benefit is that Dadonov came back and he kind of began to tear it up with them. Like he had two goals in 2 games, he had multiple points in there. He scored an OT winner. So I guess good job, guys. But like you kind of got saved there. But Vegas is sort of screwed. Why do I say this? They made the Eichel trade, which kind of takes them a lot of cap and makes them really, really tight cap wise. And then they decided also they've got Martinez and more importantly Markstrom on LTIR, which means, but in order to bring them back, they've got to get rid of some cap space, and the biggest trade option on them was Dadonov, and they needed to trade Evgeny Dadonov anywhere to get rid of that $5 million of cap space to be able to, eventually, I guess when Stone and Martinez get out of LTI, or when they're no longer injured. I'm not sure about that situation too much. To come back into the lineup, they can't do that anymore. So it's kind of like, well, Vegas right now, I think they're fighting for the second wild card spot in the West. Which I'm going to take a look at that. Again, looking at the wild card rankings for the West. Yeah. Oh, they're not even in the playoff spot as I speak. This is March 29th, end of day here. They're not even in a playoff spot. Like, sheesh. Oh, gosh. And I mean, the 2 wildcard teams, Dallas and St. Louis, both have 3 games in hand over Vegas. Vegas is a point below Dallas and 5 points below St. Louis. Oh, gosh. Oh, crap. They're not even in a playoff spot anymore. Okay, I didn't realize. I thought they were just sort of in that second wildcard spot, but they're... Like, Winnipeg isn't too far either. Winnipeg has a game in hand and they're 2 points behind, so... No. Oh my gosh. Wasn't expecting that, was I? Bit of a surprise. But they're sort of like, I don't think they have Mark Stone in the lineup, and I guess I'll do a Google search for that. Does Vegas have Mark Stone in the lineup? Like, this is... So yeah, they did get kind of screwed with this, and I think... Should I look this up now here? Well, supposing you just... Well, sorry about this. Little bit of a delay here, fortunately. Vegas. So, next game they're playing is against Seattle, which is on the 30th. So am I able to look at their lineup right now? Or no? I don't think so. Oh, wait. Yes, now I look at it. Mark Stone, Brendan McNabb, Robin Leonard, who else? Martinez as well? Now I'm sort of curious. Riley Smith, also on the injured reserve. And Dadonov is right there, nice and fine, ready to play. Okay. So yeah, Vegas is sort of screwed. I mean, literally, like, they don't get their next game is easy against Seattle. Not to put anything against them, of course. But, whoo, sheesh. Well, that's not good. Yeah, I didn't realize this earlier. So, bit of a shocker there. Because they're kind of screwed with the Dadonov situation, they're coming back and stuff. which obviously makes sense because they wanted to get rid of Dadonov because his contract expires in 2023 offseason. While if they took on Kessler's contract, it would just go away. It expires in 2022. This upcoming offseason, which means it would basically free up 3.5-ish million in cap, I believe, because we're also taking on John Moore in that trade. So yeah, kind of a bad decision for Vegas. Now look, at this point, it's like considering how bad a situation Vegas is in. There's a part of me that just wants them to make it to the playoffs, and then a team like Dallas doesn't make it because that would maybe make it easier for like a team like the Flames if they get them in the wild card. Of course, but yeah, that's my thoughts on that. Pretty much bad decision. If there's any Vegas fans watching this, what's your take on it? If you do know more stuff about this whole situation, please do tell me. I would love to know about it. So yeah, that'll be great. So next thing to talk about, question Matthew Coronato. Mwah. Beautiful. Can't complain really, I guess, about this. Coronato in Harvard hockey. They won the ECAC tournament, won the Cleary Cup, and made it to the NCAA kind of the playoffs for that, and then lost in the first game. Good stuff. But what a season for Matthew Coronato, and still as a rookie. 34 games played, 18 goals, 18 assists, and 36 points. He leads his team, leads Harvard in goals and points this year. His team in points, goals and points. Crazy insane. He's still a rookie, like a young rookie. Like, that's crazy. I mean, imagine what he's going to do next year in Harvard. Won the ECAC Best Rookie Award, which I believe I did search this stuff up. I'm not exactly sure, though. The ECAC Playoff MVP Award. And named Ivy League's top rookie. This is some good stuff for man. The Clear Cup, he was scored the OT winner to win the damn thing. And the Flames are speaking with him. Basically, Elliot Friedman said it's widely believed that he will return to Harvard next year, which makes sense for him. For me, at least, he should be returning to Harvard to develop him when ready. Like this, he's still a rookie. Imagine what he's gonna do next year. He's already above a point per game, 18 goals. He's like the best player on the team. What's he gonna do next year? In a year, where's he gonna be at? Where's Harvard gonna be at? They could literally win. They could win a lot of stuff. They could do a lot of damage in the NCAA, which is really cool. Again, I wasn't following NCAA too much, so I actually do some research on exactly how the stuff works. But that's great for Coronato. So that's awesome. And then I guess speaking of the Flames and coming back to Calgary or signing or whatever, originally going back to the 2021 draft, Flames select this guy, and I was like, "Oh, I want this guy here." Like right now, look at the stuff look at the stuff he's doing with the Chicago Steel. And I figured, it was like 1 year he stays in Harvard. I was like, Harvard, that's cool, and it makes sense to me. It made sense that he's gonna go play in Harvard for a year, and it was developed. I didn't want him coming straight to the Flames lineup or going straight to Stockton. But and then there was talks like he was gonna stay in Harvard for 2 years, 2.5 years, maybe 3 years. And I was like, holy crap, we need this guy. And I was gonna freak. I was kind of like, oh my gosh, when am I ever gonna see Coronato? But now that I think about it, now that I look at it, I'm fine with him staying 1 more year, maybe even 2 years if he needs to. 2 more years. Next year he should stay in Harvard. Just don't come play Stockton. Don't come to Calgary. Just stay there and enjoy your time there. Keep playing, keep developing, right? Get better. Win the Hobie Baker. And I guess it kind of comes from me not being desperate. My thought process not being a desperate Flames fan who wants success. Because the Flames sucked last year, and that's why they drafted 13th overall. And that's why. And this year, the Flames are the best team in the Pacific and the second best team in the West. Do we need this guy? No. We need it. I would have loved to see this guy come in and start helping the Flames succeed last year. I would have as soon as possible, I guess. But the Flames are no longer struggling, and the Flames have the time and space to let this guy develop in college, get better, and then come here and play as best version of himself. Which makes sense to me now, and I'm fine with that. I guess it does make sense for him and for the Flames as a whole, right? They can't even actually afford the cap space to sign him right now. I was thinking, I could just sign him for the playoffs to come to Calgary, play for the playoffs, and then go back to Harvard next year. It's not gonna work because I don't think the Flames have that much cap problems, I guess. And then he could also go play in Stockton, but there's already so many good players there. I don't think he needs to go into stuff there. Speaking of Stockton, finally let's get to some of the Stockton team stuff. Which is really, really awesome. I'm just going to search up the AHL standings here. Last I checked, Stockton were actually first in the entire AHL. Standings. Let's look at the league standings here. Stockton Heat are still first, with a solid lead. I guess they're actually looking at point percentage here, because points-wise, they would be tied for second with Utica. That's pretty awesome. So yeah, they've qualified. That's obviously not complaining about that. So all the divisions, the Pacific Division with the Stockton Heat play, they lead that by like a mile over the Ontario Reign, who are second. This is just good stuff. I don't really have anything to complain. Like, this is really, really good for the Stockton Heat, who missed the playoffs last year. First in the entire first team to qualify for the AHL playoffs. They've got Matthew Phillips. Oh, they've got so many good players like Phillips, Peltier. I think Ruzicka's back there. I'm just gonna take a look here at player stats. There it is. Just taking a look here at the points. Matthew Phillips, 7th in points in the entire AHL. Jacob Peltier is 9th with 55 points. He still has a rookie AHL season. Any other guys from Stockton? Nope. In the top 20, no. So there's 2, but that's still good stuff. So yeah, really awesome stuff from those guys, which that's what you want. That's what you want to see. They've also got Ruzicka. I think he is back there. I'm just gonna look at the teams here. See what the Stockton Heat are up to. I'm opening the Syracuse crunch page. There it is, Stockton Heat. Yeah, that is just, yeah. So we've got Phillips, Peltier, Godin, Philp, Kirkland, Mackey, Frisi, Tulola, Zeri. I think he's underperforming overall this year, but he's still a rookie. He's in his first year here. Emilio Pedersen. Like, they're just good. Walker Dewar, unsigned free agent right out of college. Pospisil is another guy. Ruzicka is back there. Yuzo Valimaki. I'm like, I don't even know what to do in that situation with him. Yeah. And obviously there's Dustin Wolf, who's just playing the best hockey of his career, I would say. And there's really no there's really no debate. Like, it's I think he's the best goalie in the AHL this year, no question. I'm gonna take a look here for sure in that as well. So yeah, going into goalies here. All teams. Still a rookie in the AHL's first year in the AHL. I think he's going to be there next year as well, and maybe even the year after. 62 games played, 2.33 goals against average, and a 926 save percentage. Like, oh, that's crazy good stuff. There are some guys who have better save goals against and save percentage than Wolf, but that's because he has way more games, 38 games played. I think everyone else has under 30. I think Ingram is 46, but he's way below that. But you can't. Worst season he's having. Even shutouts. Let's take a look at that. Where is that? There it is. Shutouts. Has the Flames shutout stuff come to Stockton? I don't think so. Unfortunate. Dustin Wolf actually doesn't have any shutouts. Okay, so never mind. That makes sense. That is just really good. That's awesome. I'm happy for him. Happy for Stockton. What does this mean for the Flames? Well, Stockton could literally win the Calder Cup. There's no real question about it. Like, I don't know really what there's to say. This is good stuff for the Flames. Because these prospects are being developed. They're having success. They're seeing success. And finally, some of them, I would assume next year, they're going to start coming into the main roster, main lineup, and start playing actual NHL minutes here. That's really awesome. I'm happy with the direction this team's going. They're deep. They're a good team. So yeah. And furthermore, another thing I learned, the way the AHL way it's going to work is 2 teams are going to qualify for the postseason from each division, 4 divisions in the AHL, each division, only 2 teams aren't going to make it. So basically, all but 2 teams will qualify for postseason play in 22. So that means there's going to be playoff teams. So 6 teams in the Atlantic, 5 in the North, 5 in the Central, and 7 in the Pacific. And they'll be ranked by points percentage and regular season standings. So basically, the first round, it'll be best of 3. The top 2 teams in the Atlantic, top 3 in the North and Central, and the first place in the Pacific receive straight entries into the best of 5 semifinals, division semifinals, and the first round winners, right, will be reseeded in each division. The division finals will be a best of 5, followed by the best of 7 conference finals and best of 7 Calder Cup finals. So, looking at the playoff bracket, the first team in the Pacific, which is the Stockton Heat, have already made it into the second round. They won't even be playing the first or like the qualifying round, kind of, I guess. They've already made it there. So they'll either be playing the 2nd or the 7th place Pacific team. So yeah, good stuff, I guess. Again, like, this is really, really good for the entire Flames team. I guess because these prospects are going to start showing themselves like what they're made of in the AHL, and because of that, they're going to be able to come in and actually have a place in the NHL lineup. So good stuff for Stockton. I don't even know there's much to talk about. Just happy that this is just really awesome. So I guess moving on from that topic to the Jack McBain trade. My thoughts on this. So basically, Arizona Coyotes acquire forward Jack McBain, and the Minnesota Wild in return will acquire a 2022 second-round pick. That's new. The Coyotes trade a pick. Well, what happened? Basically, Jack McBain is a college prospect, really solid player. He's playing for Boston College right now. Just gonna search up some of his latest numbers and statistics. Jack McBain here. He's playing for Boston College right now. And, so I wonder, has he started playing with the AHL team for Arizona or no? I'm not sure. Let's take a look. Okay, so he's playing with the Boston College. In his entire career in Boston College, has 117 games played, and I hope I have that number up to date. Which I think I do. 117 games played, 37 goals, 4 assists for 86 points. Solid stuff here. In his most recent year, though, 24 games played, 19 goals in 24 games. 14 assists for a total of 33 points. Good stuff. He's also played for the Canada Under-18 team, so good stuff. That's a solid prospect. I don't know why he only I guess you don't want to trade firsts, but so he refused to sign with the Wild. Wanted to go to Arizona. Beats me why, but he says it's apparently because he finds that to be the quickest way to get to the NHL, because they would be the most willing to probably pull a guy in for him. Though overall, I think this is a win for Arizona. They're getting a pretty good player here, building for the future again. That second round pick, though, seems like an underpay, like Wild. I think it should have gone to first for this one, but that second will be a very early second, like really high up in like the second round. Who knows, maybe even 33rd overall. So not the worst, I suppose. Okay, so next topic, the trade deadline reviewed in more detail, because that needs to happen here. What do I think of this? Well, you see, this trade deadline, I'm just going to go straight to the statistics. And I didn't do maybe the best job of talking about every single team. I kind of just talked about the top teams, and I guess that was my bad. So I'm actually going to get into sort of the specifics of this. So we're going to start with the Western Conference. Sort of the rankings that kind of currently sit. So teams that are currently sitting in the playoff spot, not a wild card spot, but actually top 3 in their respective divisions. There's Colorado, followed by Minnesota and Nashville. In the Pacific, there's Calgary, LA, and Edmonton. Colorado, best team in the league, number 1, who just beat the Flames. Their moves in the deadline. The main move that they made was Manson, I think. They did also get Lehkonen. Made the Sturm for Joss trade as well. They're just making moves, getting ready for the playoffs, right? Kind of building up a stronger team here, just to get ready for a big run and not have another second round exit. And I think they made all the right moves. Sure, they gave up stuff, but like this is an in or nothing year for them because it's starting to get a little bit impatient for them, which makes sense, and I don't blame them, right? Like 2 back-to-back years, I think 3 straight years, maybe of second round exits, so not good for them, which makes sense why they're doing that. And I think they made the right moves at the deadline, making them pretty much, I would say, like number one contender for the cup this year. Next is Minnesota. Minnesota went ahead and did the thing that they really needed to do the thing they needed the most, which is get goaltending. They got Marc-Andre Fleury, which is a big win. And potentially even just gave up only gave up a second for this one. Potentially considering how I guess the condition works out, and they might get a first, but who knows? They did the thing they needed to do. And again, you can't rely on Cam Talbot. Cam Talbot, again, nothing against him, but I think he's more of a backup than anything, which means kind of they were relying on Kakinen and Talbot, that tandem, to do the work for them. And as soon as they got Floyd, they got rid of Kakinen. They traded him to San Jose. Meanwhile, they also got Jacob Middleton in kind of the mix. So, a couple of really good moves for them. And they did a great, they pretty much, if nothing, they got Marc-Andre Fleury for not that much of a price. And he's going to help them succeed. He's going to be a big piece for them. They also got Tyson Josh for the Sturm for Josh Stealing, and that one's still something that just needs to pan out and see how it works out for both sides. But I think what Minnesota also needed was a little bit of depth scoring. They got Kirill Kaprizov to do a lot of offensive stuff, right? Guys like Ryan Hartman, they're contributing, right? Their back end's okay. With, right, Matt Dumba specifically, really good D there. Can't think of anybody else that's on that team, but overall, they've got a good team. But I think they need a little bit more offensive depth, which I don't believe they were able to do too much, and I wish they did something more on that front. I think that's what they needed here, again, considering how big this, the entire West is with the offense. And then I guess not offense, but just the skill in general to compete with that. Third place in Central is Nashville. What did Nashville do? Gosh, I'm actually going to have to look at all the trades to see if Nashville's actually done anything specifically interesting. Because this feels like they should have done more. And I'm going to go ahead and just look at here online. One of the things I did hear about from them was that there was some kind of talk regarding making some cap related moves in order to be able to be able to actually afford re-signing Philip Forsberg in free agency, and I think they should be able to do that in general. So I think they would be able to do that sort of thing. I read this one article, this was a while back, way before the deadline, talks about moving David Riddick, which breaks my heart as a Flames fan because I love him. I think he's awesome. Regardless of how he was playing overall, I think he was just a solid backup for the Flames and even a starter at a time. But again, they kind of moved back. They didn't move him, obviously. And I'm just gonna go ahead and look at some of the deals that the Preds made. They didn't make any big splashes here. Yeah, I don't think they've done anything much here, which is disappointing considering that they could still have. Well, actually, they did get Lauzon. Never mind, they paid a second for Jeremy Lauzon, an overpay, but they do bolster the back end a little bit again, getting another average defensive player there. So yeah, sure, I forgot about that one. Yeah, small. They got Alex Biega for future considerators. That's a small one. Made a AHL type of trade with the Kings. That seems to be all. No question. So yeah, that's kind of it. They didn't make any key major trades here. Which I wish they maybe did something in order to just bolster that team up. But I think they've got a good roster. I think overall they're deeper than Minnesota, and They have good goaltending with Saros. They have got good D, especially with Roman Yossi. I think he should win the Norris as well, looking like the best Norris candidate right now. Um, as well as just Forsberg, Duchesne, they're all having really good years. So I think we're good in that sense. So now comes the Calgary Flames. I did talk about them a lot in the last one, in last episode, but just a quick brief. I think the Flames needed to get another top 4D or a potential top 6 or mid 6 forward who's legitimately going to crack the roster. Like Ricard Raquel, Hampus Lindholm, maybe even Claude Giroux, JT Miller, Brock Besser. They were all out there. All those names were out there. And I wish they acquired someone like that, which they didn't. They did get Carpenter, Yarn Crow, and obviously Toffoli was a big one. But I wish they did something more. This is a Flames fan. I just want them to see, want to see the team go for it all, which they didn't do that. So, maybe it's where it didn't make sense. The LA Kings, they don't make any big splashes either. They're surprisingly second in the division. Then against them, of course, I don't see them staying there long. Edmonton's red hot right now. LA's playing okay. They're suffering from some injuries. And I wouldn't be surprised if soon enough Edmonton comes to second place, LA falls down to third. Would they get out? Would they fall to Vegas? I don't think so. I think they'll make the playoffs this year, but yeah, that's kind of it. They didn't make any big moves, which means they're not looking for a big run. Right now it looks like it's going to be Edmonton and LA in the first round. It just depends on who comes to play. Like if the Oilers come to literally play like a full-on offensively mad game, not really a playoff game, but offensively mad game, they're going to outplay the LA Kings. But if they kind of play a little bit weaker, I think they could succumb to the overall playoff grit, which they don't have, and the Kings do. But regardless, they didn't do enough to actually go for a big run, which wasn't their intent either, I would assume. Yeah, that's it. Edmonton Oilers. My thoughts on them kind of can be summed up. Too little moves for them. I don't think they did enough. They need offensive depth. They're too reliant on McDavid and Draisaitl, and then the couple guys that supplement them, like Hyman, Evander Kane, Kaylor Yamamoto, Jesse Puljujarvi. Those guys supplement them. This team is absolutely dry. You've got McDavid Draisaitl playing above 20 minutes a game, and the fourth line playing under 10. It's disappointing, right? That they haven't been able to do. It's disappointing for Oilers fans, not as a Flames fan. I'm happy. Oilers keep losing. But this has been a problem for years for them now, and you've got so much skill in McDavid and Draisaitl. And, they're still not able to do that much stuff. I think they need to do more. They got Brassard. They also got Brett Kulak. But it makes sense. I think going in, they should have maybe made a couple of other moves there. Moving to the wild card situation. Right now it's St. Louis. But, again, they could easily take Nashville's spot in the third place for Central. But St. Louis, they got Nick Leddy, which was the biggest trade they made. I think they're already a good team. I'm not expecting them to make it out of potentially maybe the second round. And if they face the Flames in the first round, which is what it looks like right now, I don't see them getting out of the first round either. But they made a couple moves. Could they have maybe tried to bolster, just get a couple of depth for it? Maybe, sure. But I think they did what they needed to do. They need to make a big move. In my opinion, at least. I have heard some disagreement on that front, but I think they did what they needed to do and made the right moves. Dallas Stars, second wildcard spot right now. I think they'll make it. I think they should make the playoffs, especially Vegas kind of stays in the same crappy position they're in right now. They're a great team. They're a good team, but they're going to need to do something like they did back in 2020 with the bubble era, with the bubble playoffs, and just go on a tear. I don't think they'll be able to do that. Ben and Sagan are, in my opinion, well past their prime. I mean, they should be playing better than they are, but they're not. Pavelski was pretty hot. Has been pretty hot of late. Robertson. Those guys are the main guys. But overall, though, I don't think they're making a big run here. not the biggest moves like Kubodin's out. Kudobin, sorry. And they don't. I don't think they have offense, defense. Well, defense they got Klingberg and Miro Heiskanen and even Ryan Suter. But I think offensively and even in goaltending, they're not that strong right now. Um, Vegas Golden Knights. Like, what can you say? They make a trade for a guy in order to relieve some cap space to bring back like their top players, and that backfires. They don't know that they don't know that they're not supposed to trade him to a team, and they trade him there, and he kind of comes back, and then they're screwed. Like, I think this trade deadline has been a pretty big fail for them. I mean, sure. I was actually watching Steve Dangle's live stream, watch a Steve game with Leafs, watch a Leafs game with Steve Dangle. What am I saying? He's talking about the situation, but he said Vegas kind of won it because Dadonov came back and he started playing really, really well. But in the long run, like, would you rather have Dadonov on your team or Mark Stone on your team? That's kind of the dilemma for Vegas, I would say. Um, so pretty big fail for them. I would give them a pretty big on them. Winnipeg Jets. Um, a confused team, I would say at the deadline. Not knowing where like to go for it or not, but right now it seems like it's far out of reach for them. Um, because like sure they could even overtake Vegas in the wild card race, but Dallas and St. Louis are quite far ahead, and even Nashville's kind of falling in and out of that first wildcard spot. They're too far ahead for Winnipeg to reach. Winnipeg's not going to make it. They do trade Andrew Kopp, and get some pretty good return for him, I think, and I think that's going to help them out. Obviously, did they did they get a first for Kopp? I believe they did. Let me look that up. Nope, they got a pair of seconds though. Okay, pair of seconds. But they did get a pretty big haul there. Well, I mean, I guess they do have a condition where it becomes the first if the Rangers make the conference finals and Cobb plays in 50% of Rangers playoff games. Okay, so makes sense in that condition now. Winnipeg, I don't see them making the playoffs. They did what they needed to do, but I think to get rid of some of the other guys like Stastny, that was a trade talk. That didn't happen. They weren't able to accomplish all of their goals, I think, but overall, they're still a middle of the pack team. The thought that comes to mind with the Winnipeg Jets is that what it's tough to see what's wrong with them. Like they're such a good team, skill wise. Um, like they shouldn't be where they're at, right? Like outside of a playoff spot. Like I would have probably put them to make the play. Like I would have put them to make the playoffs over Minnesota or Nashville. Uh, me like even Dallas. Like not maybe even maybe not over St. Louis, but those guys for sure. And they don't even make it. It's hard to point out what's wrong with them. I think it just maybe it's sort of that situation where it's too little, too late. They weren't playing up to standards at first, and then Paul Maurice leaves. That's gotta be a part of it, but not the way it should be for Winnipeg. Vancouver, another confused team, but I think they're a team that needs to go into a rebuild. Like, I mean, you've got to make some of those moves. Like your cap is pretty tight with Miller and Besser. Talks about trading like Miller and Besser and Connor Garland, who they just got this offseason. Even Oliver Ekman Larson. Pretty much I think anybody but like Demko and Pedersen and Hughes. Um, like I don't get what they didn't do any of it, and it was sort of like the weekend before the trade deadline. It was kind of like, well, I mean, we do well here, like we're going for the playoffs. We don't, we're out, and they didn't do well. In the two games they played there before the trade deadline, but they didn't make any moves. Did they make any major moves? I don't think they'd made any big seller moves. Like there were talks of Besser coming to like Calgary. Miller, really wanted Miller to come to Calgary. JT Miller, none of that happened. Are they necessarily going for the playoffs? No, but I think they're keeping them for the future. Like while that makes sense, it feels like they needed to get rid of at least some of that cap space. Personally, I would have hung on to Miller and Besser. I think they should have traded Connor Garland. Maybe there was talks about that. Again, I don't know. Did they do what they needed to do? Only time will tell. Maybe they would start playing really well. Maybe if not this season, the next season with these guys. And they're like, well, glad we didn't trade them. Maybe they don't. Maybe they just kind of start falling off again. It's kind of coming back, like they continue this sort of bad streak. Then it'll be like, well, maybe we should have gotten rid of them at the trade deadline. Only time will tell. San Jose. Biggest name for them, I think, was Middleton, and they traded him. So, good job. And they also got Capo Kakkonen helping out their goalie situation. So, I think they did good over that. Again, selling team, they're not making the playoffs. Anaheim isn't either. So, they kind of did what they needed to do. They wanted to shed Kessler's contract, but didn't. But that's beating around the bush. The main points, which I completely forgot about. Traded Manson, traded Raquel, traded Hampus Lindholm. Full on unload. Like, those guys are pretty key major guys, in my opinion, on this roster. So they've been there for years, and trading them, it's like, well, that's a big piece, but they're rebuilding. Like, they're no longer the core. Now the core is Trevor Zegras and the others. Makes sense why they did this. But at the same time, like, I wish they were like, hey, look at that. Calgary needs some guys here, Calgary. But they did what they need to do. So, good job, and I think they accomplished their goals. So, that's my thought on them on the deadline. Chicago. Basically, the only biggest thing they did was trade Hagel away. Hagel's a good player. But makes sense to trade him. Like, I get the need. God, they're like they're going back to the rebuild. Like, they have skill in DeBrincat and Kane, and but they're not good enough. They're not doing anything like this. Or they even acquired Seth Jones. Like, it almost felt like they were going for like one last big run with this team, with this core, before going into the rebuild. And I guess that didn't happen. So now that didn't happen, here they trade Hagel and they get 2 firsts. Like, that's a pretty big win if you're Chicago. And they did what they kind of needed to do. The question with them that comes to mind is it time to trade Taves or Kane? Toes or Kane? Kane, no. Toes, maybe, yes. Good captain, good leader, good two-way player. I think, they could get a pretty high value out of him. He's a leader. Maybe they could keep him for the year and then maybe try to get rid of him in the offseason or the next year trade deadline. But I think, considering the direction they're headed, I don't think they made the right moves. Hagel makes sense, but other than that, they didn't do enough to sell. But again, there wasn't any talk about any of their other guys getting traded either, so okay, makes sense. Seattle was like, well, let's just trade half our team away. Giordano leaves. Yarncrow leaves. Luzon, they got a second out of him. He's out. Johansson. I'm probably missing other names. Who else did they trade here? They did trade a good amount. They did discard a pretty solid group of players, or just trade them away, and it makes sense. They're a rebuilding team, not really rebuilding. They haven't really been good at all. They're just trying to get this core set. They're trying to get draft picks, which they have a lot of, and I think they really did do what they needed at the trade deadline. And they passed with flying colors, except for trading Giordano for only 2 firsts. So only 2 seconds, sorry. Only 2 seconds and a third. But other than that, good job, Seattle. Arizona. A team that did most of their selling in the offseason, right, with Dvorak and guys. They needed to trade Chychrun, which they couldn't do because he was injured. Can't really control it. Maybe they should have scratched him before. Just not played him, knowing that he was going to get traded and he wasn't going to be, he was going to get traded and they didn't want to risk him getting injured. That's what the Habs did with Sherrod. That's what this Kraken did with Gio. And they didn't do that, and they kind of paid for it. So Chychrun's still there. But I like that guy. I think he's a good player. He's a type of leader that you can build a young team around. So maybe it's better for them that he sticks around. Clinton Keller's having a good year, sticks around. But overall, that team is just shambles right now. They'll start building up. They can only go up from where they're at. Which is, I think they did the stuff they need to do. Also acquiring Jack McBain, which is a big win, I think, for them. Next up, still looking at the East. Metro is right now Carolina, New York Rangers, and Pittsburgh. And the Atlantic is Florida, Tampa, Toronto. Looking at the Hurricanes. Hurricanes didn't do enough. They got Domi, but not enough. like looking at their main competition in the East at least, Rangers, Panthers, Lightning, maybe even Toronto, and Pittsburgh. Like there's a lot of good talented teams, and looking at the lineup, like they didn't do enough to be able to compensate that. They've been struggling of late. Last little bit they haven't had like last 10 record here. They're 4-3-3. That's positive record, but they're still, looking at them like Rangers are 7-3-0. Pittsburgh is 6-3-1. Florida 7-2-1. Tampa's 5-5-0. They're also struggling of late. Toronto 6-3-1. Like, they don't have the right players they need. They didn't do enough at the deadline, right? So that's my thought on that. Rangers. I think the Rangers did such a good job at the deadline, acquiring just depth guys to help them out. They're not a very deep team, but they fixed that. Get Kopp, they get Vetrano. Oh gosh, they made a lot of moves. They got Mott. Tyler Mott from the Canucks. They did make a couple of those big splashes here. I'm trying to look for a couple of the names. I can't seem to see any other ones. They also got Justin Braun to help out the defensive end of their game. So another big win for them. They made a lot of moves. They gave up picks, but they made a lot of good moves to help bolster their team. I think they did a great job. And then there's the Pittsburgh Penguins. The only thing to do, they got Rickard Rakell, which was a very good. I think that's the biggest thing they did. They also got Nathan Bolo, but not the biggest move. In my opinion, just a small transaction that's just going to make their defensive end a little bit deeper. They're going for it. I think Penn's unexpectedly, they're going for it. Like Crosby's having maybe the last really elite level season of his career. Same with Malkin. And you're going for it, right? Like one last cup for Sid. I think that's the mentality of the Pittsburgh Penguins right now, and that's what they're doing, and I think they're going to do that. They're going for it. They really are, and they actually record Raquel. That does help them a lot. The Atlantic now. Florida Panthers. Second best team in the league. What did they? They get Sherrod and Giroux. You can't go wrong with that. Like, what they gave up for Giroux, like a first plus a few things, and even got a couple of prospects with Giroux. Florida takes that deal by I don't even know. What are their line? What are the Panthers lines? I need to see this. I'm gonna look it up here. Florida is deep. They're a deep team right now. There is no question about it. Florida Panther lines. Is Giroux in the first line? Let's look that up here. So is this how updated is this? Yeah, I think this is up to date here. First line, Verhaeghe, Barkov, Giroux. Second line, Huberto, Bennett, Duclair. Third line, Mason Marshman, Eetu Luosterainen, and Sam Reinhart. Fourth line is Lomberg, Acciari, and Thornton. D, they're Sherrod, Weir, Forsling, Gudas, Hag, Montour. They're stacked. Do they have 5 forwards on their first power play unit? Reinhardt, Barkov, Duclair, Huberto, and Giroux. Oh, that's crazy. What? I don't know how exact to say. I'm not sure if Verhaeghe's on their first line. Perhaps I could look it up on the NHL app here, but that's pretty insane if that's the case. They also just beat the Montreal Canadiens 7-4. And yeah, of course, they're looking good. They're looking really, really good right now. What is there to say? And that's just, they're good. Yeah, it's a deep team. They make their team better with these acquisitions. Carolina, you're not too far away. You should probably look in and take some notes. My thoughts on it, in general here. Go back in the standings and So, Tampa Bay, they get Hagel. A good acquisition. But at the same time, they're giving up a lot of the bottom 60. In the last year or so, and I said this last episode, they gave up a lot of the bottom 6 they had the last 2 years for their 2 cup wins. They got Nick Paul back, which that's a big win. They signed Corey Perry in the offseason, which that's another big win for them, at least. Uh, However, this is like it's like, oh gosh, how did this? It's like I don't think they did enough to make their team kind of replace that depth, get that depth going again. Hegel's a big piece, but they gave up a lot for him. I wouldn't say this is necessarily the most ideal deadline for Tampa Bay, but they did what they needed to do to be, I would say, one of the top contenders in the league. And now we get to Toronto. Um, uh, Goaltending, Toronto. What happened? Actually, I forgot to mention this about Edmonton as well. But where is their goaltending? I'm going to talk about both teams. Goaltending is dead for both these teams. Look, Toronto's screwed. Like, they sent Mrazek down on waivers to the I think he's in the Marlies right now. Their tandem is what? Shalgren, and who's backing him up? I'm not even sure right now. Could be someone else. But and then there's Edmonton, like Koskinen and Smith. They're good, but they're not good enough. For a run at least. Like, okay, there it is. Like, gosh, I don't know where to find stuff, but yeah, like, this is kind of not that good. If you're the Leafs, like, they needed to go all in for, Marc-Andre Fleury, which they didn't. So, I guess, let's do their goaltending, yeah. Also, they had Mrazek in. Oh, so they have Mrazek and Shalgren. Okay, never mind. I guess they sent Mrazek down for, I'm assuming, just because the cap space opened up, which, okay, that makes sense. He actually came in as relief afterwards, so Shalgren got pulled. Okay. Against the Bruins, where they won 6-4, but I think kind of finished off pretty bad. Like, the Leafs had a 6-4 lead. Yeah, Leafs had a 6-4 lead and then allowed 3 goals. Yeah, okay, well, pretty Leafs thing to do. So yeah, that's, shows goaltending is a problem for them. Same with the Oilers, like, Koskinen and Smith, okay, well, that's a good tandem to have, but they needed to make a big move here, which they didn't do. So, what's the next team to talk about? Boston. Okay, Boston Bruins. They get a couple small. They get Josh Brown. They're sitting in a playoff spot right now. They should make it. I think right now the East is pretty simple to look at. The 8 teams will make it because outside of the teams, which is those teams are Carolina, New York, Pittsburgh, Florida, Tampa, Toronto, Boston, Washington. Outside of that, there's Columbus with 69 points. Washington is the bottom team, is 84. So there is really no debate here. These 8 teams are making it. Columbus, Washington, and Boston, those other two, they're going to definitely make it. So Boston get Josh Brown. That's the big. Oh no, they also got Hampus Lindholm, which that's a big one. That's going to help them a lot. Cause like last couple of years, they've lost Krug, Chara, key defensive players that they had there. And they've traded them. So, or not traded them, maybe lost them, but they don't have them anymore. And so, good acquisition in Hampus Lindholm, I think. The Caps. Washington Capitals, they do make a couple moves. They get Ryan Hansen back. They also get I forget his name, someone from Arizona, back on their team. Make a couple of moves to make their team a little better, but look, Washington's not making that deep of a run. I think it's quite obvious. Like, they look good going into the playoffs, and they hit the playoffs, and they kind of just crumple apart. Their power play in PK has not been good this year, which is the point it comes like, and they need to, I think, do something to improve that aspect of their game, because you've got flippin' Ovechkin who can score like every power play, and you're not capitalizing. To me, it looks like we needed to get some more pieces. They were legitimately looking at a run, but I don't think they're going to be able to accomplish much of these playoffs. Columbus, they get rid of Max Domi. That's the biggest thing. It makes sense. He wasn't panning out for them, and just a good idea to move him out. The Isles, quite a disappointing season for them. I don't think they did much here either at the deadline. I don't remember them talking about them much last episode either. So yeah, that's just that for the Isles, I think. Didn't accomplish much. So this year and disappointing here, so that's kind of where they're at. Detroit, they're building up for a pretty big future, and they trade Nick Leddy, just cap, I guess. Just getting that cap space cleared up, and makes sense. They didn't do much, which makes sense to them. And there's Buffalo. They're having a disappointingly good season. Not disappointing for me. I'm glad to see them succeed, but disappointing in the sense that they should have been going for like Shane Wright, and they're far from it, to say the least. They made a lot of their biggest like rebuilding moves in the offseason. They traded Eichel, which right now they're winning the Eichel trade. Vegas might not make the playoffs. In that is what I mean. They're like Buffalo. Yeah, they did their stuff. Like they made all their moves in this trade deadline. They didn't have much to do, so kind of just neutral on that one. New Jersey, again, a team that should be rebuilding. But the biggest win of them all, they get the Hamburglar on their team. Yeah, no, I'm just kidding though. But yeah, it's nice to have, I guess. They're in goaltending issues, but they're not in a playoff position to be able to want to actually trade for one or acquire one here. Deadline makes sense. The stuff they did. Philly, I think it was bad to trade Giroux. Sure, wanted to go to Florida, but like I get you want to give him a couple. Like you traded away your major captain, and it's disappointing for sure. To see him leave this team, and you can feel it. So, but still, they get stuff back in return. They trade Braun, but they didn't get enough in return for Philly. So, sorry, for Giroux, and I think it is a bit of a loss for Philadelphia. The Ottawa Senators, they don't do much either. They, gosh, everything now. They do get Zach Senyshyn in return for Josh Brown. Again, a small transaction, but that might do something for them. They don't do much. Montreal, they unload. They do get rid of some stuff. They traded Toffoli earlier, like about a month plus before the trade deadline. They get rid of Sherratt. Did he trade anyone else? I have to think. Oh, my memory is dying right now. But they make moves, and they do stuff. They're rebuilding. Makes sense for them. That's my take on all the teams. I did do more of like a playoff analysis last episode, and I'm going to kind of once the playoffs start getting set in stone, I'm going to talk about that more in a future episode. And so that's after the trade deadline reviewed. I'm just looking at the time of how long I've been talking. We're about to actually be longer than the last one. So sorry about that, guys, but I hope you're enjoying listening. So just overall, just to finish off the episode, just wanted to talk a little bit about the podcast in general. So here's the question: how often will I talk about it? Sorry, I mean like how often will I release episodes? I'm hoping weekly. Because I think it's gonna sort of like when will it also happen? So talking about how often it'll happen, it'll probably be so right now. What I've kind of been doing has been kind of like this episode should come out on a Wednesday. Last episode was also on a Wednesday, so like a weekly basis. But I might change that up and sort of just start releasing episodes like every weekend because I have to do certain weekdays, right? And maybe every 2 weeks based on how much time I have. That's kind of just right now. I'm hoping to stick with weekly, and every weekend I'll release an episode. And that's because obviously I have stuff. I'm still going to school right now, so therefore that's still a priority for me, and therefore I want to be able to focus on that, and not let this get in the way of that or school get in the way of this, and be able to sort of prioritize. Like if I still do continue to record, in the middle of the week, like Tuesday and Wednesday, and do all the stuff that would I wouldn't have really that much time for the podcast or that much time for school stuff. So therefore, I'm hoping every weekend, maybe every 2 weeks if stuff does happen. But again, you will know if there's an episode that might get skipped, and that should be it for the podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and you've been here for quite a while, so I will let you go now. But thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Thank you so much for watching the first episode and for watching this one, or listening in, I guess. If you do have any thoughts on anything I've talked about this episode, please leave in the comments. Any thoughts, opinions. If there's something I said you agree with, you share that. Something please do share that. I would love to hear your opinion. If you have any questions or specific, we talked about it, about that as well. Topic you would like episode, please do let me know in the comment section below as well. And I will be more than happy to talk about it this podcast next episode. So thank you so much for watching. Have a good day. And I will see you next week.